So what we're going to talk about today is, what is positivity? Why do we need it? How do we use it? Now, who do we use it on, and when do we use it? And so I want to start with what it is. So I had a good time kind of exploring positivity as an idea, as a word, and I recognized that there was just this multitude of definitions that could come up. And I said, wow, okay, there's a lot here to work with, which was always exciting for a minister. So first, I think we know positivity best as an attitude, right? It's this attitude of looking for the good and being optimistic in the world. And I said, okay, I know I can work with that one. And then I sort of thought about this moment that we're in of COVID-19. And I said, ooh, there's a whole different definition when we talk about testing positive, right? And there's a whole other connotation around what that means. And I thought, okay, I might be able to work that out. And then I came upon the other definition. You know, when you think about a battery or you're getting a jump in your car, there's a positive, right, current, electricity. And I looked that one up, and it said that it was a current flowing from the point of higher potential. I said, oh, that's juicy good. We're going to be able to use that. And last, but most certainly not least, there's that idea when we say to ourselves and to others, I'm positive, I'm sure, I'm certain. I don't just believe, I know something. And we're going to have to be positive about our positivity in this moment more than ever. And so here's the question: why do we need positivity? We need it. This year, I've had to claim, what is it that I'm claiming for my life? And I've said peace and joy, and for me personally, in that order, because I've had a lot of happiness in my life, and I feel really blessed by that. But I think of happiness as the result of some set of actions, where joy to me is that internal thing, that unspeakable thing, that indisturbable thing. So that's what I've been claiming for my life, and I want to claim it for your life too. Peace and joy is why we need positivity, because see, in order for us to have peace, we're going to have to recognize that God is in control. Right now, we're going to have to surrender to the idea that there is something greater than us, and greater than an election, and greater than a candidate, and greater than a proposition, and greater than all of these things. We're going to have to give it to God, because keeping it in our little pretend control is just not really working. It's not. How's that worked out so far? Right? There is, for people of faith, there is something else that brings us peace. It's a inner knowing of peace that comes from knowing God is real and knowing that there is no force that opposes God. I love Reverend Deborah likes to say, listen, it's an election, but it's not God that's up for election. Do you understand? There's a whole lot of things that may or may not happen, but either way, as I think as my mother likes to say, God is still on the throne, right? However you think about that divine power, whatever name you call it, whether it's love or nature or spirit or Gaia, whatever you call that great force of energy, surrender to it. Know that it doesn't get disordered by personalities, by political parties, by people. It doesn't get disordered. And that same thing is what we have to recognize in everyone. Now, this is harder to do. If you have ever heard the idea we're all God's children, this is the time for you to ask yourself, do you believe that? Now, sometimes we say, yes, I believe that. Of course, I believe that. But if we ran a test right now on your mind, if we ran a test on your thinking, if we ran a test right now on your words, would we come back? Would the test result come back positive for peace and joy? I'm not saying what the results might be. I'm just going to ask you to evaluate for yourself. There is a joy. How do we cultivate that joy? Why do we need it? We need it because joy changes everything. And that little action of gratitude, right? If you just, before you open your eyes or get out of bed in the morning, if you just be grateful for each and every part of your body, it will change your entire consciousness, change your day. If you can look outside and see something, that's something to be grateful for. If you are breathing and your heart is beating, there's something always to be grateful for no matter what. And we can't afford to take that for granted right now. We need positivity. We need peace and joy so that we can sustain and endure. So I'm just going to invite you to take a little test and see what the results are that your life is showing. Now, how do we use positivity? Because I don't want to pretend like, I never want to pretend like this work is easy. So when we are talking about using positivity, that's when we got to think about this electric current. We're going to need some power. It's just not as easy as being like, oh, I feel peace and joy. That's not how that works. We're going to have to look for it. We're going to have to put in some effort, do some work, draw on some power greater than ourselves. We're going to look for something positive. Just look for something positive. You might not find it on social media. You might not find it on the television. Where might you find something positive? When is the last time you told a story of transformation? When is the last time you said, oh, I feel so good about this thing? You're going to have to look for positivity. It might not just knock at your door, but if you seek positivity, it will find you. You will find it. And then you're going to have to work for it. Because what's in front of your face every day in this time in our society is an obstacle. And so here's your work. You have to forgive. Now that in and of itself can be a lifetime of work. You have to forgive. That which is activating you, that which is drawing in your hatred and your fear, you have to forgive those groups of people that you have a hard time even talking or thinking about. And how do you do that? You have to say affirmations. You have to say, we're all God's children. You have to say, God is all there is. God is the only power in my life. That whole affirmation, you might want to rewind to that part and say it again. You're going to have to pray for the power to forgive. You're going to have to pray for the remembrance of the affirmations. You're going to have to pray for resources, for your eyes to have the current for higher potential, to look at that which disturbs you and see a higher potential. And then you're just going to put that on rinse and repeat. Now, who do we use this positivity on? Well, I think you know where I'm going to start. We're going to use it on these so-called enemies. The Bible says, if God is for us, who can be against us? And so you're going to have to start with that if. Why don't we start right there? If God is for us. Now, if you could just get that part, let's get that part together. God is for us. So how about we change it and say, since God is for us, who can be against us? I don't have any enemies because no force outside of me has power over me because I'm surrendered. Going back to that step, I'm surrendered to the power of God. So that power is a protective force, not just on me, on my people, on my community, on everything that I think about. There's a protective force. Now, what do we do with the appearance to the contrary? We have to reference all those powerful moments of transforming love. How have I been transformed by love? How have we seen others transformed by love? This is where I love the chorus of books that Reverend Andrea gave me as tools. There's Catherine Ponder's The Prospering Power of Love, and it teaches about how if you just hold love in your consciousness, just hold someone safe, as she used to say, in your mind. Same thing with Henry Gray Grayson's Mindful Loving. These books are amazing because they talk about the research that showed that when teachers just held their students in their mind, they didn't even have to be in the classroom, they didn't even have to do anything with them, but when they held those students who were having a hard time in their mind, their grades improved, their behavior improved, because there's something about a powerful, loving, spiritually grounded consciousness that is transformative. And see, this is not what we've been focused on right now. We've been focused on the idea that we have enemies, but the science of mind teaches us that thoughts are things and they replicate. What you focus on replicates, it just multiplies. So what happens if we start to say, all of these people are mine? And I am the presence of peace. I am the presence of God in the middle of even this. I always say faith is not for the good times. It's for times like these. And if we continue to demonize other people, if we continue to give them the power in our minds of evil, what do we create? I have this goal of going to all 50 states. And last year I hit up Oklahoma and Arkansas. And when I was in Oklahoma, I made it a point to go out and seek people with different opinions from mine. And I talked to this young woman who was part of the Republican Party. And she said to me, let me tell you what the problem is with liberals. Every time they talk to you, it's with this condescending tone that the problem must be that you're ignorant. The problem must be that you just don't know. And I don't want to be treated like that. And I thought, wow, is she lying? So what is the future of this country if we're going to not think any differently? I'm going to tell you that it's easy not to consider the other side. It's easy to tell people they should always wear a mask if you don't have to wear one 12 hours a day at your minimum wage job. I'm not saying people shouldn't wear a mask. I'm just saying it's easy to decide somebody is our enemy if they make a different choice than us. It's easy to decide somebody ought to see or ought to think our way. It's easy to decide that they have to be stupid, that they have to be evil. But how dare we think that we should deserve to run a country where we think half the people are stupid and evil? Nobody deserves to lead in that way. And are we doing anything different than the people we call our enemies? One of my favorite biblical stories is that the two parents who come with claiming the ownership of the baby, and the wise judge says, well, why don't we just split the baby down the middle? And one of them is like, absolutely, let's do that. And the other one is like, no, I would never want that. You know, you can just have the baby. And of course, the wise judge gives the baby to the one who's willing to say, I'd rather let it all go than to split it down the middle. Who's going to say, I don't want to split it down the middle? It's not that important that I win. It's more important that we get through this hole. Who's going to practice love right now? There's a reason why I did positivity right now, just a couple of days from what has become the most fearful moment in our consciousness in my life. You know, we thought Y2K was bringing us some fear. Y'all remember that? But this moment right here, every single one of us, I'm included, we've been talking about it like it's the end of the world, like we are, in fact, electing God. But who deserves to be the parent of this thing called the United States? Is there anyone who is willing to hold it as whole, who is willing to say, all of these are my people? I'm just inviting you to join me in making a shift. Just a shift. to believing in a different idea, because it doesn't matter who wins if both sides continue to perpetuate this idea that the other side is the enemy. It's easy to think that way. It's simple to think that way. I'm going to offer, it's lazy of us, right? Dr. Jaylani Cobb and I did a talk for the East Bay on the spiritual consciousness. What is the spiritual moment in this political awareness, right? And we talked about it, and you just know I just adore that brother. I think the highest of him. But the only thing we disagreed about is something that I have been practicing just as much as any one of you, which is the idea that the other side is ignorant, that they just are uninformed and do not know. It's impossible to believe that they could have a different opinion, that for them, what they value is important enough to have anybody on the Supreme Court as long as they line up with their belief of protecting the life of what pro-life believes in. I'm not saying I agree with any of those things or any of those strategies on COVID or race or immigration. I strongly disagree, and with everything in me, I will fight all those policies, but I will also never abandon the sacred activism belief that every single one of us is God. And I surrender to that thing that has transformed since the pharaohs, that has moved the hardened heart. I surrender to that thing to fix it, because we are not really fixing it. We are replicating it. We are saying, you can go low, we can go low too. Remember when positivity meant hope, meant uniting? And we've come to believe that that didn't work. We've come to give up on it and say it was anemic. We've come to give up on it and say it was weak. We've come to fear. But I'm going to tell you where it came from. Because you treat other people the way you treat yourself. And so who do we use it on first? We use it on us. Because that same judgmental voice that has no patience, has no tolerance for anyone else, I'm going to tell you a secret. It's the inner voice. It's the way we talk to ourselves. It's the way we judge ourselves. It's the way we hate ourselves. It's the violence we do to our own consciousness, to our own bodies, to our own thinking, just the constant inner critic inside us. There's a book Rick Carlson wrote called Taming Your Gremlins. I've never forgotten that just image. It's an old book, been around a long time, of just a little gremlin running around in my life. And I've been blessed to have an amazing therapist who's moved me from constantly thinking about my thoughts into being present in my body. And one of the things we do is the internal family system. So I have all these little proxies for the different parts of my thinking and my consciousness. And one of them is the critic. And there was a very transformational moment in the beginning of our work together. I strongly believe in therapy. I believe in religion. I believe in the science of mind. And I believe in therapy. And in this therapy work, we held to this idea of my inner critic. And I could see it. I could feel it, just the kind of constant fear-mongering, the constant negativity, the constant I'm not doing enough, and whatever I'm doing, I'm not doing it right, and I am exactly what the people who I see as my enemies said I am, and I pretend like I'm not, but in my secret, quiet place, I'm afraid that I am, and the shame and all of those not enough feelings. I'm pretty sure I'm not by myself. Pretty sure I'm not by myself. And you like to believe that just because somebody got a podium and a pretty outfit on, they're not feeling what you're feeling. But I can tell you, as a person who's been a minister and a person who's been a practitioner way before anybody ever gave me a license, lots of us no matter what kind of success we look like we're having. We're all having these inner horrible conversations. And so it's our job to use this positivity on ourselves to tame this gremlin. So here we're sitting, visualizing, holding on to this idea of my inner critic. And my therapist, she always talks about, okay, can you just invite this part of you to just step back for a second? Just ask it if it's willing to just step back for a second. And this negotiation that goes on with my parts is always an interesting thing because I'm always kind of afraid that, the critic is going to say, no, I'm not going to step back. But somehow it ends up working out. I say, can you just have a seat for a second and let me go over here and talk with the wise woman or the inner child or somebody else? And it usually does. So that's been very helpful just to know I could negotiate with this part of myself. But then we did something even deeper. She said, we were ending the session, and she said, okay, now I want you to imagine a big bed with all your parts. And I want you to take the critic, and I want you to tuck it into bed. And just take it and tuck it into bed. And think about, what does it want? What does it need to feel safe? And whenever somebody's doing good heart work with you, your tears just swell up immediately. And I went to put the critic in the bed, and I had the aha moment, right? I had the aha moment that the critic is just trying to help me. Just trying to keep me safe, just trying to warn me that I might be doing something wrong, and it's just trying to let me know, don't do that, right? I always say feedback is a gift, even if it comes in an ugly wrapper. So the critic is just saying, girl, watch out. You might not be doing it right. I don't like that most of the time. It's not useful most of the time. But when I understood the intention, I could just put it to bed and say, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate what I see you. I see you're afraid that something bad's going to happen. I see you afraid that if we're not perfect, it's going to be all bad. But it's okay now. You can lay down and take it down, right? And when the critic shows up, sometimes I can laugh now and just be like, okay, I know it's all right. I know you're afraid, and it's still going to be all right, right? And see, if I can forgive my critic, then maybe I can be less of a critic on the rest of the world. You know that thing where you think somebody's talking about you, it's usually because you're talking about them, right? You come in and you like, I know she's going to say something about what I got on. But how many times is it because you just sat around with all your friends and talked about what somebody else got on or what they did or who they with, and how many times they made the same mistake? It's the same thing. Who do we use it on? We use it on us. And when we change us, when we realize that this same painful, punitive, punishing thing is the whip we beat ourselves with, maybe we can put it to bed. That's going to be required. Because the last question is, when do we use it? And I know you know the answer. It's right now. We have never needed positivity more than we do right now. November 1st. This is the day. We cannot wait. We cannot rest. We're going to have to decide what is ours to do as people of faith. We're going to have to do something different. We're going to have to do more than believe. We're going to have to take that form of positivity that is certainty, that is knowing, that is I am for sure. We're going to have to say, this election has no power over me. I will not let fear or hatred have power over me. Love is greater. It's greater than anything that I see. God is greater than anything that I see. Nature has a way of working it out. I know something more powerful than this, and it lives in me and everyone I see without exception, and yes, him too. It's time, right now, to let go of that critic that judges us so harshly and sees no possibility for transformation, no possibility for humanity and people who disagree with us. No possibility for forgiveness for people who do things we think of as evil, knowing good and well there's some things we have a hard time forgiving ourselves for. I did something yesterday that I'm feeling a little shame about, trying to think about how to make amends for. That thing, that gremlin, right now, it needs to be addressed. So as I close, I want to just remind us of some of the things we've talked about today. Positivity means running a test on your life. Run the test. Take the test on your life. Go and submit your life to a test and see if the results come back peace and joy. Run that test and see if you come back positive for peace and joy. Positivity means connecting to that current, that electricity for the point of higher potential. We are going to be positive that we can work it out because we have the electric current, the power to work this thing with our forgiveness, our affirmation, and our prayer. Positivity means our attitude is one of gratitude, and because we are grateful for the presence of God, we turn our lives over to it. We surrender to it. No enemy has power over us, even if it's that internal enemy. That positivity is we are certain. I am absolutely positive that it doesn't matter what happens on Tuesday, God is still on the throne. It doesn't matter what happens on Tuesday, it's getting straightened out. That's how we got here, because it's been getting straightened out. The racism is coming to the top. This is a good thing for everything that's been underneath the bottom. The divisions from the people are coming out. And so who is going to step forward and say, in this time of darkness, I am the light? Who is going to step forward and join me in saying, I'm going to shift my thinking, because somebody has got to get themselves in the position of being the moral and spiritual leadership of all the people. And I'm going to remind myself and my inner critic and my inner judge that what I truly believe, what I know for certain, is God is all there is. There is no power that opposes that force. And I just want you to join me, to join the women's ensemble as we seal this in our consciousness by saying completely yes.